If you think your morning commute is brutal, imagine being a wood frog in Canada. Every winter, this tiny amphibian does something that should be medically impossible. It freezes solid, not a little chilly, not needs a sweater. We're talking ice crystals forming in its tissues, its heart stopping completely, and zero brain activity for months. It's basically dead. Except it's not. The wood frog has discovered the ultimate life hack. When things get too difficult, just pause existence until conditions improve. It's the animal kingdom's version of turning your computer off and on again, except the computer is also technically deceased. Let's appreciate the absolute audacity of this survival strategy. Most animals deal with winter by migrating somewhere warm, growing thick fur, or finding a nice cave to sleep in. The wood frog looked at those options and said, "No thanks, I'll just die instead." And then it wakes up in spring like nothing happened. No big deal, just casually returning from the void. Here's how this works. Because evolution apparently has a dark sense of humor, when temperatures drop below freezing, the wood frog's body begins producing massive amounts of glucose, basically sugar. We're talking concentrations that would put a diabetic in a coma. This glucose acts as a natural antifreeze, but here's the catch. It doesn't prevent freezing entirely. It just prevents ice crystals from forming inside the cells, which would shred them like tiny frozen knives. Instead, ice forms in the spaces between cells and in body cavities. Up to 70% of the water in a wood frog can turn to ice. Its heart stops, its lungs stop, brain activity ceases. By every medical definition we have, this frog is dead, but its cells remain intact, preserved in a glucose bath like the world's tiniest cryogenic experiment. And then it just waits for weeks, sometimes months, a frozen frog sickle sitting under leaf litter looking like a small brown rock that really committed to the bit. Come spring, when temperatures rise, the frog begins to thaw from the inside out. Its heart starts beating before blood can even flow properly. Within hours, it's hopping around, looking for food and mates, acting like it didn't just spend 3 months as a corpse. No brain damage, no frostbite, no existential crisis about mortality, just business as usual. Scientists have studied this for decades and still can't fully replicate it. Human medicine has been trying to crack cryogenic preservation for years, spending millions on research, and this frog figured it out for free. Evolution apparently gives out miracle technologies to random amphibians while humans are still struggling to keep organs viable for transplant for more than a few hours. The wood frog lives across North America, from the Appalachian Mountains to north of the Arctic Circle. That's right, north of the Arctic Circle, where winter isn't just a season, it's a lifestyle. These frogs have colonized some of the harshest environments on the continent by simply refusing to acknowledge that freezing solids should be fatal. Other frogs migrate to ponds or burrow deep underground where temperatures stay above freezing. The wood frog, it barely digs at all. It just finds some leaf litter, maybe a shallow depression in the ground, and commits to the freeze. It's the equivalent of dealing with a blizzard by standing outside in a t-shirt and sheer force of will. What makes this even more impressive, or more absurd, depending on your perspective, is that the wood frog has to time this perfectly. Freeze too early, and it wastes energy on a false alarm. Freeze too late, and it dies for real because ice crystals form in its cells before the glucose can do its job. It's survival by biochemical precision, and one miscalculation means game over. But here's where it gets even darker. Baby wood frogs in their first winter have a significantly lower survival rate. They hadn't built up enough glucose-producing capacity or fat reserves yet. So nature's strategy here is freeze a bunch of baby frogs, see which ones make it, and those are the ones that get to breed next year. It's quality control through mass mortality. Very efficient. Absolutely horrifying. And just when you think nature's approach to reproduction couldn't get more brutal, let me introduce you to another crowd favorite, the praying mantis. You know the story. Everyone knows the story. Female mantis eats the male's head during or after mating. It's become the go-to example of aggressive female behavior in nature, a cautionary tale at dinner parties, a punchline in bad comedy specials. But like most things in nature, the reality is somehow both more complicated and more disturbing than the simplified version. First, the facts. Yes, sexual cannibalism happens in praying mantises.
No, it doesn't happen every single time. Rates vary from 13 to 28% in the wild, depending on the species and environmental conditions. In laboratory settings, where mantises are kept in small enclosures and can't escape, the rate shoots up dramatically. So part of this infamous behavior is actually stress-induced, which is weirdly relatable. Trapped in a small space with another creature, someone's getting eaten. Nature's metaphor for bad relationships has never been clearer. But here's the part that turns this from merely dark to absolutely unhinged. Getting his head bitten off might actually help the male mantis succeed at his one biological purpose. Let me explain. The male mantis's brain contains inhibitory nerves that restrict certain movements, including the rhythmic abdominal contractions needed for successful sperm transfer. When the female bites off his head, she's essentially removing the inhibition. His body can now complete the mating process more enthusiastically. Decapitation as performance enhancement. Evolution really looked at this scenario and said, yes, this is fine. This is how we'll design things.
So, from the male's perspective, or what's left of it, this is actually a viable reproductive strategy. Sacrifice yourself to the larger female, literally give everything you have, and maximize your chances of passing on your genes. It's the ultimate kamikaze mission. Romance is dead, and in this case, so is he. From the female's perspective, it makes cold, pragmatic sense. She needs protein to produce eggs. The male is right there, made of protein, and conveniently already engaged in close physical contact. Why go hunting later when dinner is making himself available? It's efficiency. It's also nightmare fuel, but efficiency nonetheless. The male mantis does have some survival tactics, though. He approaches cautiously. He times his advances for when the female is eating something else, because even mantises understand that you don't interrupt someone during a meal. If he's successful at mounting her without being detected, he might complete mating and escape with his life. It's the arthropod equivalent of a heist film, except the prize is reproductive success and the security system is a cannibalistic female with reflexes faster than he can process. Some males have even evolved to approach from specific angles that make it harder for the female to grab them. It's an evolutionary arms race where one side is trying not to die and the other side is trying to get dinner and reproduction handled in one efficient swipe. Natural selection at its finest. And before anyone thinks, well, at least the female benefits from this, consider that she's burning energy hunting and eating her mate when she could potentially be eating other prey. Unless she's starving, which is when cannibalism rates increase, she's not necessarily coming out ahead either. It's more like both parties are locked in an evolutionary strategy that benefits their genes, even if it's terrible for them personally. Researchers have discovered that well-fed females are significantly less likely to eat their mates. Shocking revelation. When you're not starving, you're less likely to eat your partner. Someone should alert human relationship counselors immediately. But wait, there's more biological horror to unpack. In some mantis species, the male will perform an elaborate courtship display before approaching, essentially announcing, I am a mantis, I am a male, please don't reflexively murder me. Sometimes this works. Sometimes the female eats him anyway, because instinct is stronger than diplomacy. Male mantises have also been observed, donating themselves? In cases where the female is clearly malnourished, some males will position themselves to be eaten after mating, essentially choosing sacrifice to ensure their offspring have a better chance of survival. It's simultaneously the most noble and most disturbing reproductive strategy in nature. Honey, I'll be the first meal our kids never knew they had. The praying mantis also holds the distinction of being one of the few insects that can rotate its head 180 degrees, which means it has excellent peripheral vision. The male knows she can see him coming. He knows the risks. He approaches anyway. That's not bravery. That's biological programming so strong it overrides self-preservation. Or maybe it's the insect version of doesn't matter, had sex. Either interpretation is valid.
Here's a fun detail. The word praying in praying mantis comes from the way they hold their front legs, like hands folded in prayer. Praying mantis would be more accurate, given that these insects are ambush predators that hunt anything they can grab, including each other. But praying stuck. And now we have an insect named after religious devotion that routinely commits cannibalistic murder. Someone had a sense of irony when naming species. Mantises are actually incredible hunters. Those spiked forelegs can snatch prey out of the air in 50 milliseconds. They have binocular vision, which is rare in insects. They can take down prey much larger than themselves, small birds, lizards, frogs. Yes, frogs, including, theoretically, wood frogs. So imagine, you're a wood frog. You survived freezing solid all winter. You thawed out, you're hopping around feeling pretty good about your immortality hack, and then a praying mantis grabs you. After everything you went through, the cellular preservation, the glucose management, the perfect timing, you end up as lunch for an insect. Nature doesn't care about your achievements. Nature only cares about who's hungry right now. The wood frog and the mantis represent two different philosophies of survival. The frog says, endure, shut everything down, preserve what matters, and wait for better conditions. The mantis says, consume, take what you need from whatever's available, even if that's your mate. Both strategies work. Both have been refined over millions of years. Both are absolutely metal. And both remind us that nature operates on a completely different set of rules than human society. We build hospitals to keep people alive through winter. We've developed ethical frameworks around murder and cannibalism that nearly everyone agrees on. We generally discourage eating your partner after sex. The wood frog and the mantis don't have any of those hang-ups. They do what works. Freeze solid? Sure. Eat your boyfriend's head? If you're hungry. Survival isn't pretty. It isn't fair. It isn't designed for our comfort or moral approval. It's just evolution, solving problems with whatever solutions stick around long enough to reproduce. Sometimes that solution is biological antifreeze. Sometimes it's strategic cannibalism. Sometimes it's both happening in the same food chain, in the same forest, on the same day. The wood frog will freeze again next winter. The mantis will eat again next week. They'll keep doing what they do because it works, and because 4 billion years of life on Earth has created a system where working is the only criteria that matters. Everything else, fairness, justice, survival of the individuals, is just commentary from species that developed enough brain capacity to care about such things. Nature doesn't negotiate. It doesn't explain itself. It just hands out ice crystals and mandibles and says, figure it out. And somehow, impossibly, life keeps finding ways to figure it out. Ways that would never pass an ethics review board, but ways that work nonetheless. The wood frog freezes, the mantis feeds, and somewhere evolution laughs in glucose and exoskeletons.